They say history is written by the victors. But what if parts of our past were never written at all, just quietly buried, forgotten beneath layers of time, waiting for the curious to dig them up again? Long before the word UFO ever echoed through radio waves, before the Roswell crash and government cover-ups, there were whispers, not in classified documents or secret files, but in stone, in myth, and in the stars. Some believe that Earth has been visited not recently, but thousands of years ago, when humans were just learning to stand upright, to build fires, to look up at the sky and wonder what it all meant. Imagine this: a tribe of early humans huddled around a fire, watching as something streaks across the night sky. It glows, it hums, it descends. They don't have words for spaceship or extraterrestrial, so they do what humans always do. They turn awe into myth. The visitors become gods. The ship becomes a chariot of fire. And over time, the story becomes a legend. But legends, as it turns out, often leave footprints. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a map, nothing unusual at first glance. It showed the known coastlines of Europe, Africa, and South America. But here's the twist: it also showed Antarctica. Not only that, but it depicted the continent without ice. This was centuries before Antarctica was officially discovered, and even longer before modern technology could peer beneath the ice to map what lay beneath. So how did a man in the 1500s know what no one else did? Where did he get his data? Piri Reis himself claimed that his sources were ancient maps, passed down from civilizations long gone, or perhaps passed down from something not quite human. This isn't just about one odd map. It's about a patterned, scattered pieces that, when placed together, begin to form a strange picture. In ancient India, sacred texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana described vehicles called Vimanice metallic flying machines that soared through the sky, carried warriors into battle, and unleashed weapons that could level entire cities. One passage tells of a single weapon that shone with the brightness of 1,000 suns. When it struck, the ground turned to ash, hair and nails fell from bodies, birds dropped mid-flight, and the survivors were left with terrible burns. Sound familiar to modern ears? It echoes the effects of a nuclear blastradation sickness, environmental devastation. But these texts were written more than 2,000 years ago, according to mainstream history. The first nuclear weapon was detonated in 1945, so how did people in the ancient world describe something so uncannily similar? Are we to believe it was just metaphor? Or could it be that they witnessed technology far beyond their time technology that didn't originate on this planet? The deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. All over the world, in isolated caves and forgotten cliffs, ancient people painted what they saw. Some of those paintings show hunters and animals. Others show something very different. Thin, tall figures with oversized heads, black almond-shaped eyes, lines from the sky descending toward them, disc-like shapes hovering above. These aren't isolated incidents. From the Sahara Desert to the Australian outback, from the hills of India to the mountains of South America, thousands of miles apart, yet telling the same story. How could people who never met, never spoke, who lived thousands of years apart, all imagine the same figures? It begins to feel less like coincidence and more like memory. Some researchers call it the ancient astronaut theory. They believe that beings from another world visited Earth long ago, not as invaders, but as teachers. They shared knowledge, taught us agriculture, astronomy, architecture. Maybe they guided the building of the pyramids. Maybe they whispered secrets to the Sumerians. Maybe they left when their mission was done, or when we turned their lessons into myths. Skeptics laugh, of course. They ask where the physical proof is, but perhaps the evidence isn't in metal scraps or abandoned saucers in the stories that survived. In every culture, in every corner of the world, there are tales of gods who came from the sky, of visitors who descended in great machines, teachers who walked among men, glowing with light, only to disappear once more into the heavens. What if these gods weren't divine, but interstellar? Think about it. Why does every ancient culture, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, the Hopi to the Hindus, speak of beings from the stars? Why do they all describe chariots of fire, glowing discs, flying palaces? Why do they all look up? We're told these are myths. But what if myths are simply memories that lost their context? Over thousands of years, stories get distorted, names change, symbols fade, but some truths remain. And maybe, just maybe, we are starting to remember. We live in a time when we send our own machines into space. We map distant planets. We listen for signals. Perhaps that curiosity isn't new. Perhaps it's hardwired into us, implanted by those who came before, who sparked our first questions. So here we are, looking up once again. The only question now is this: were they ever really gone? Are they still watching, waiting for the right time to return? In the golden heart of Egypt, where the desert stretches out like an ocean of silence, there stands a monument so grand, so perfect in proportion, that even after thousands of years it still leaves scientists and engineers scratching their heads. The Great Pyramid of Giza. We're told it was built as a tomb, a final resting place for a king who believed his soul would rise to the stars. That's the official story. But when you look closer, really look, you begin to feel something doesn't quite fit. It's as if the pyramid itself is keeping a secret. Let's start with the basics. The Great Pyramid contains over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons. No mortar holds them together, yet the joints between stones are so tight, you can't slip a razor blade between them. The pyramid is aligned almost perfectly to true north, more precise than any modern compass. And it's not just the Great Pyramid, there are 3 of them, forming a pattern that mirrors the 3 stars of Orion's belt. What's more, the placement of these pyramids on Earth matches the orientation of those stars in the sky. Not today, but as they would have appeared nearly 10,500 years ago. So how did ancient Egyptians, armed only with copper tools and human labor, pull this off? Archaeologists argue that it was the product of brilliant engineering and decades of labor. But there's a growing number of researchers who believe that answer isn't just incomplete, it might be wrong. Because what if the pyramids weren't built solely by human hands? What if they were built with help? Stories passed down through Egyptian mythology speak of a time before time when the gods walked among men. Osiris, Thoth, raw divine beings, who descended from the heavens bringing knowledge and light. One of these figures, Thoth, was said to have taught writing, architecture, mathematics. He didn't just guide kings, he reshaped civilization. But here's where things get interesting. Some ancient texts describe these gods as beings with glowing skin, radiant eyes, and voices that boomed like thunder. In some carvings, they are shown holding objects that look suspiciously like modern technology rods. Orbs, devices with no known purpose. Some even appear to be levitating. And then there is the legend of the Ben Stona, mythical object that supposedly came from the sky and landed in ancient Heliopolis. It was shaped like a pyramid, glowed with energy, and was said to be the source of the god's power. The tip of the Great Pyramid may once have been made of such a material, a golden capstone that reflected the sun so brightly. It was said to be blinding. Some believe it wasn't just decoration, but part of a device. That's where the theory deepens. What if the pyramid wasn't a tomb at all but a machine? Some researchers suggest it was built to generate energy. The internal chambers, with their precise measurements and odd electromagnetic properties, have no clear function as burial rooms. No pharaoh's body was ever found inside the Great Pyramid. No inscriptions, no hieroglyphs praising a king's afterlife, just cold, silent stone. In 1993, a robot exploring a narrow shaft deep within the pyramid discovered a tiny door sealed with copper fittings. Behind it, another chamber, and behind that, no one knows. Attempts to drill through were mysteriously delayed, postponed, even shut down. To this day, what lies beyond remains a mystery. But it raises the question, why build such a complex passageway? To nothing? And then there's the Orion connection. The ancient Egyptians believed the pharaoh's soul would ascend to Orion, home of Osiris, the god of rebirth. The Great Pyramid's internal shafts are aligned with incredible precision to the Orion constellation, the stars Sirius and others. It's almost as if the entire structure was designed as a kind of cosmic gateway, a portal to the stars. But if that's truth, then who designed it? Were the builders just honoring the stars? Or were they guided by beings from the stars? Some go further still, suggesting that the pyramid might have once functioned as a power plant. This theory, though controversial, is based on real science. The core chamber has unusual properties. The granite used contains quartz, which can generate an electric charge when compressed. The pyramid sits atop underground water channels that generate natural electromagnetic energy. Combined, these could theoretically create a form of wireless power. Nikola Tesla himself was fascinated by the pyramids. He believed their geometry could harness the Earth's energy, even based some of his own inventions on pyramid designs. Tesla once said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Perhaps the ancient Egyptians already did. Of course, none of this is conclusive. The mainstream view is still that the pyramids were tombs, incredible feats of human effort. But the deeper you look, the more the simple explanations begin to crack. Why are there no hieroglyphs describing how they were built? Why do the oldest pyramids appear to be the most advanced? And why are there so many myths around the world about golden gods who came from the sky and built great monuments before vanishing? Maybe the pyramids were more than tombs. Maybe they were beacons, or messages, or monuments left behind by those who came before, to teach, to watch, or perhaps just to remind us. We are not alone. As the sun sets over the Egyptian sands, casting a long shadow from the tip of the Great Pyramid across the desert, one can't help but feel the weight of the past pressing forward. These structures were not meant to crumble. They were meant to last. It's meant to be found again, meant to make us ask questions. And the biggest question of all, did we build them, or were we shown how? They say the past speaks to those who are willing to listen. Sometimes it shouts in stone, sometimes it whispers in lines drawn across the earth, and other times it stares back at us with eyes carved from forgotten hands, challenging us to remember a story we were never told. Far from Egypt's desert winds, in the high plateaus of southern Peru, lies one of the greatest enigmas ever etched into our planet, the Nazca Lines. Massive geoglyphs carved into the dry earth stretching for miles. From the ground, they appear as random scratches, but from the sky, they become breathtaking. Giant hummingbirds, monkeys, spiders, geometric patterns and runways. Yes, runways that go on for hundreds of meters in straight, perfect lines. These figures were created over 1,500 years ago, yet their scale is so immense that you can only truly see them from above, which raises the question, who were they made for? Some say they were religious, spiritual offerings to the gods. Others believe they were astronomical calendars or ceremonial paths. But to others, the answer is more provocative. These lines were not made for those on Earth, but for those looking down from the sky. It sounds wild, until you realize that the Nazca civilization had no way of viewing their work from the air. No towers, no hot air balloons, nothing. And yet the figures are precise, proportional, executed with a clarity that defies the primitive tools they're believed to have had. Imagine a people isolated, surrounded by desert dedicating generations of work to carve messages into the earth. Not for themselves, not for nearby tribes, but for watchers above. Who were they trying to reach? And what if they weren't the only ones? It's halfway around the world, in the heart of modern-day Turkey. Archaeologists unearthed Göbekli Tepe, sprawling temple complex dated to over 11,000 years ago. That's 6,000 years before the pyramids. Older than Stonehenge, older than writing. It rewrote everything we thought we knew about human civilization. The site is filled with massive T-shaped pillars, many over 15 tons, arranged in circles and decorated with images of animals, celestial symbols, and abstract patterns. No one knows who built it or why. But what we do know is this: its construction required advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and planning. It appears suddenly, with no signs of gradual development, as if it came from nowhere, as if someone taught them. Local legends speak of sky people who descended from the stars to bring wisdom. Even today, locals avoid the area at night. They say strange lights still appear over the hills, that the site hums when the wind is just right, that it remembers. In Australia, ancient Aboriginal cave paintings tell a similar story. There are beings known as the Wandjinatal, pale figures with oversized heads, large black eyes, and no mouths. They were said to have descended from the sky, created the earth, taught the people, and then returned to the clouds. Their images are sacred, their presence is felt. What's striking is how closely they resemble modern depictions of aliens. Long heads, slender frames, always surrounded by halos or light. Now think about this. Australia's Aboriginal culture is one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, 60,000 years old. And yet, their stories echo those told in Egypt, in Peru, in India, different continents, different eras, same visitors, or collective memory. Some believe what we call God's spirits, or creators, were actually advanced beings, visitors from the stars who once made contact with early humans. They came not to conquer, but to observe, to guide, maybe even to test, and then they left, or hid. In 1977, a signal was received by a radio telescope in Ohio. A burst of energy from deep space, 72 seconds long, that matched no known natural source. The astronomer who saw it circled it on the printout and wrote just one word: "Wow." To this day we call it the WOW signal. It has never been repeated. It has never been explained. But what if that was a ping, a response? We're still here. Meanwhile, modern governments have begun to admit what many have long suspected. In recent years, declassified military footage revealed unidentified flying objects performing maneuvers beyond our current capabilities, zigzagging, accelerating instantly, hovering without sound. The Pentagon now openly uses the term UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, admits it has no explanation for some encounters. So maybe the question isn't if we've been visited. Maybe it's, why did they leave? And when will they return? The trail is everywhere. In pyramids aligned with the stars. In cave paintings of beings with no mouths. In crop circles so perfect they baffle scientists. In ancient books that describe flying machines and weapons of light, it's as if they wanted us to know. Or maybe to remember, because perhaps this isn't their first visit. Perhaps they've been coming for a very long time, watching us, helping us, waiting for us to grow. And now, in the age of telescopes and satellites, of decoded genomes and artificial intelligence, we are finally catching up. The next time you look up at the night sky and wonder if someone is out there, remember this: your ancestors wondered the same. They looked to the stars, not just with curiosity, but with memory. Memory of a time when visitors came down from the heavens and walked among us.